Hi, I'm Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guy. Also today I'm at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, and continuing episode 396 with part 2. What you see right behind me is Lehigh Valley 40. Lehigh Valley 40 was built by the Budd Company in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1951 and is the 5410th diesel rail car built by that factory and is an RDC-1 type diesel rail car. It was used by the Lehigh Valley Railroad, and this is the number it carried. For many years, it was used for hauling passengers on board as well. Then, in 1962, it was sold to the Reading Railroad, and it was renumbered 9163. After the Reading Railroad merged to Conrail, the car was then acquired by the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority, and it kept the number. Then in 1981, it was retired, and in 1984, it was then donated to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is preserved today. What you see right behind me is Baldwin 1200. Baldwin 1200 was built by Baldwin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1952 and is the 75709th diesel locomotive built by that factory and is a Baldwin S12 type diesel locomotive. It was one of the first two demonstrator units to be built by Baldwin, and the second one was the 1201. This locomotive was then sold to the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad along with its sister, and this one was renumbered 758 and the other being 759. They both worked together at the railroad yard switching cars in Blue Island, Illinois, and they were the only two of their type to operate on the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad. Then this locomotive was sold to the United States Navy in 1959, where it was renumbered 65 00369. Then the 759 was retired in 1966 and was likely scrapped that time. This locomotive was retired, and in 1992 it was donated to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania by the United States Navy Ordnance Depot in Earl, New Jersey, and was soon repainted to its Baldwin livery number. Today, this locomotive is seen on display at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is preserved today. What you see right behind me is Pennsylvania Railroad 500,001. Pennsylvania Railroad 500,001 was built by the Pennsylvania Railroad Shops in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania, 1966, and is a tanker car. This car is also known as the Rail Whale, hence the size of this car. It is one of two that were built, and car 500,000 was scrapped later on. This car could carry 38,000 gallons inside the tank. Then, in 1968, the Pennsylvania Railroad and New York Central merged to form the Penn Central Railroad, and the car was then renumbered 79900. Then, in 1976, the Penn Central then merged to Conrail, where the car would be renumbered 70899. Then it would go to the Norfolk Southern Railroad. Then in 1995, it was then retired, and then in 1997, it was displayed in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Then afterwards, it would then be acquired by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen on display today. What you see right behind me is Pennsylvania Railroad 4800. Pennsylvania Railroad 4800 was built by General Electric in Schenectady, New York in 1934 and is the 116 46th electric locomotive built by that factory and is a GG1 type electric locomotive. It is one of 139 GG1s built. This is also the first GG1 built. It is the only GG1 that was built with a riveted body, hence the nickname of the locomotive is Old Rivets. Also, it was used for hauling passenger trains for many years. It was originally numbered 4899. Then it was renumbered 4800. Then in 1968, when the Pennsylvania Railroad and New York Central Railroad merged to become the Penn Central, the locomotive kept the number. Then in 1976, the railroad merged to Conrail but still kept the number. It was the only GG1 to wear the Conrail blue and was the only GG1 to wear the Conrail bicentennial paint scheme to celebrate 200 years of the USA. Later, it was retired, and in 1980, it was acquired by the Lancaster chapter of the National Railroad Historical Society in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Then in 2000, it was acquired by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen today. Also, Pennsylvania Railroad 4800 is one of 16 surviving GG1s left in the world today, and 4800 can be found here at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, along with Unit 4935 as well. And today, it can be found here at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania, where it is today. What you see right behind me is Amtrak 915. Amtrak 915 was built by Electromotive Division in LaGrange, Illinois in 1979 and is the 776073-16th electric locomotive built by that factory and is an AEM-7 type electric locomotive. For many years, it hauled Amtrak passenger trains on the Northeast Corridor between Boston, New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, D.C., and ran at speed about 125 miles per hour on the tracks. These locomotives are also nicknamed meatballs by rail fans because these locomotives were designed in Sweden and the AEM-7s were built in the United States, which is why they'd be known as Swedish meatballs. Then in 2015, it was retired and was donated to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen today. What you see right behind me is Reading 1. Reading 1 was built by the Budd Company in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1937 and is an observation car. This car saw service on the Reading Crusader passenger train for many years. It was used on the back end of the passenger trains it rolled on for many years. Then in 1967, it was sold to the Canadian National Railroad, where it was renumbered 304. Also, the interior was renovated and a snack bar was installed. It also operated on the Lake Champlain until the early 1980s. Then, in 1982, the car was then retired from service, and then in 1983, it was bought by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, and was restored to how it looked when it was used by the Reading Railroad. Today, it is preserved here at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen on display today. What you see right behind me is Pennsylvania Railroad 3936, 3937. Pennsylvania Railroad 3936, 3937 was built by the Pennsylvania Railroad Juniata shops in Altoona, Pennsylvania in 1911 and is the 2244th electric locomotive built by that factory and is a DD1 type electric locomotive. This unit is a married pair and it means they are permanently hooked together. The first two units were tested in 1909 and 25 were subsequently ordered that year for delivery in 1910. This pair was used to work in tunnels under the Hudson River between New Jersey and New York City, taking power from a 600-volt DC third rail rather than an overhead catenary. The units operated between Manhattan Transfer and Pennsylvania Station, and from there to the Pennsylvania Railroad's coach yards at Sunnyside Yard in Queens, New York. The units of this kind ceased operating on mainline passenger service in 1924 when Pennsylvania Railroad's 13 L5 units appeared. However, they still hauled empty passenger trains from Penn Station to the Sunnyside Yard, and their simplicity and reliability meant that they actually outlasted the L5 units by some years. In 1967, 3936 was renumbered 4780 and 3937 was renumbered 4781. In 1968, it was then retired from service when the Pennsylvania Railroad and New York Central Railroad merged to form the Penn Central Railroad. In 1979, the Penn Central donated the unit to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, and it was restored to how the railroad built it originally. Today, this is the only remaining DD1 left in the world today, and it is preserved here at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania where it is seen today. What you see right behind me is Virginia and Truckee 20. Virginia and Truckee 20 was built by Baldwin in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1875 and is the 3687th steam locomotive built by that factory and is a 260 mogul type steam locomotive. Also, the locomotive is named Tahoe. The factory that built the locomotive was originally known as M. Baird and Company around that time it was built. The locomotive was used in freight service and passenger service on the line for many years. It worked the Virginia and Truckee Railroad in the state of Nevada originally. It originally burnt wood. In 1907, it was converted from burning wood to coal. In 1911, it was then converted to burn oil. Over the years, the locomotive had several different modifications. In 1926, it was put in storage in Carson City, Nevada. In 1942, the locomotive was sold to Clifford C. Bond Construction in Arcadia, California, and it helped build several railroad classification yards for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. After the war, it was stored in Bong's Yard in Arcadia, California. In 1968, the locomotive was then bought by the Pennsylvania Railroad Historical and Museum Commission for preservation, and it then went on display at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania, where it is seen today. It was shipped to Strasburg, Pennsylvania on a flat car, and during that time, it was painted black in most areas, and the smokestack was different compared to the one it has. It was soon cosmetically restored to its 1875 look. Today, it is on display in this spot at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen today. Also, Virginia and Truckee 20 is one of three Virginia and Truckee 260s still around, but there are only two originals that remain, and 13 is located at the California State Railroad Museum in Sacramento, California, and it is named Empire. And 20 can be found here at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is today. What you see right behind me is Pennsylvania Railroad 5690. Pennsylvania Railroad 5690 was built by the Pennsylvania Railroad Juniata shops in Altoona, Pennsylvania in 1934 and is the 4263rd electric locomotive built by that factory and is a B1 type electric locomotive. This was the last of its kind to be built. This is the original number it had. It's been many years switching cars around in New York City. Then, in 1967, it was renumbered 4756. In 1968, the Pennsylvania Railroad and New York Central merged to form the Penn Central Railroad, and it kept the number. Then, in 1971, it was retired, and it was then bought by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, and it was restored to its original glory. Also, it is the only remaining B1 electric locomotive left in the world today and is preserved here at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen on display today. What you see right behind me is Western Maryland 203. Western Maryland 203 was built by Pullman in 1914 and is a business car. This car spent many years hauling railroad executives on board for several years, and it was seen rolling on the back of passenger trains many years ago. Carl Gray, who was president of the railroad from 1867 to 1939, used this car for many years. It had other executives on board as well. It had accommodations for up to 4 executives with a dining room, kitchen, pantry, crew quarters, lounge, and 2 master bedrooms, and both had a shower. In 1954, Dorothy Draper, who was a decorator of hotel and automobile interiors, remodeled the car. Then in the 1960s, it was retired and it was then acquired by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is preserved today. What you see right behind me is Letonia Railway 1. Letonia Railway 1 was built by the Lima Locomotive Works in Lima, Ohio in 1906 and is the 1799 steam locomotive built by that factory and is a 3 truck shay type steam locomotive and is a 65 3 class steam locomotive. This locomotive was never used by the Letonia Railway. Originally, it was built to work the Enterprise Lumber Company in Sims, Louisiana, and was originally numbered 4. For many years, the locomotive was used to haul timber products during its service life in the logging industry. In 1913, it was sold to the Cherry River, Bloom, and Lumber Company in Jerryville, West Virginia, and was renumbered 16. Then in 1952, it was then sold to F.C. Cook Company in Alexandria, West Virginia, and kept the number. It was then leased to the Beech Mountain Railroad in Alexandria, West Virginia, starting in 1953, and it still kept the number. Then, in 1954, the lease ended and it was returned as Cook Natwick Company in Alexandria, West Virginia, and it still kept the number. Then it was sold to Eli Thomas Lumber Company in Fenwick, Pennsylvania, and was renumbered to in 1956. In 1964, it was retired, and in 1966, it was acquired by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, and was renumbered 1 and lettered Letonia Railway. But like I said, that railroad never owned this locomotive, though. Today, it is preserved here at the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen on display today. What you see right behind me is W.H. Mason Lumber Company 4. W.H. Mason Lumber 4 was built by Climax Locomotive Works in Corey, Pennsylvania in 1913 and is the 1237th steam locomotive built by that factory and is a two-truck Climax type steam locomotive and is a B-class steam locomotive. For many years, this locomotive was used to haul timber for the companies it was used for. It was built originally for the Moore Keppel and Company in Elmore, West Virginia, and used this number for that company, and it always had this number. Then in 1930, it was transferred to the Middle Fork Railroad in Elmore, West Virginia. Then in 1948, it was sold to the W.H. Mason Lumber Company in Elkins, West Virginia. In 1956, it was then retired from service and was then sold to Edaville Corp in South Palmer, Massachusetts, where it operated till operations were ceased. Then in 1992, it was purchased by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen on display today. What you see right behind me is W.T. Smith Lumber Company 4. W.T. Smith Lumber Company 4 was built by Heisler Locomotive Works in Erie, Pennsylvania in 1918 and is the 1375th steam locomotive built by that factory and is a two-truck Heisler type steam locomotive and is a 53-8-38 class steam locomotive. It was used to haul lumber products for the companies it was used by for many years. It first worked the W.T. Smith Lumber Company in Chapman, Alabama, and was originally numbered 10. It was never numbered 4 during its service life. Then it was later sold to the Angelina Hardwood Lumber Company in Faraday, Louisiana, and was renumbered 6. Then it was later sold to the Chicago Mill and Lumber Company in Tallulah, Louisiana, and it was renumbered 5. In 1965, the locomotive was retired from service, and it was then bought by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen on display today. What you see right behind me is the Vulcan Ironworks diesel. The Vulcan Ironworks diesel was built by the Vulcan Ironworks in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania in 1930 and is the 4067th diesel locomotive built by that factory and is an 80-ton gasoline switcher type diesel locomotive. It was originally used at the Vulcan Ironworks where it was built and was used as a shop switcher for the factory. Then it was used at the Abe and Solomon Incorporated. Then it was used by the Dashore Car Company. Then in the 1960s it was retired from service, and in 1973 it was purchased by Harold Cox, who moved it to Dashore, Pennsylvania, and Ed donated the unit to the Electric City Trolley Museum in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and it was used to switch trolley cars in places where there were no overhead wires. Then in 2006, it was then donated to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen on display today. What you see right behind me is Pennsylvania Railroad 5403. Pennsylvania Railroad 5403 was built by the Pennsylvania Railroad Juniata Shops in Altoona, Pennsylvania in 1892 and is a baggage RPO car. This car was used for a number of years on the railroad and was once used for many years and was used in passenger service on the railroad and used for sorting mail on board when it was used on trains as well. Another section of the car was where passengers' baggage would be kept on board as well. In 1939, it was then retired from service. Later, it was then acquired by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is preserved today. What you see right behind me is Conrail 2233. Conrail 2233 was built by Electromotive Division in LaGrange, Illinois in 1963 and is the 28141st diesel locomotive built by that factory and is a GP30 type diesel locomotive. Originally, this locomotive was built for the Pennsylvania Railroad and it always carried this number. It was used to pull freight trains on the railroads it served for many years. Then, in 1968, when the Pennsylvania Railroad and New York Central merged to become the Penn Central, it was used by that railroad. Then the Penn Central merged to Conrail in 1976, and the locomotive was used by that railroad. Then it was retired, and in 1984, it was restored to its Pennsylvania Railroad livery. Then, in 1998, it was donated to the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, and it was repainted in its Conrail livery as it is today. Also, it can be seen on display here, and also you can visit the locomotive's cab and sit where the engineer used to sit as well. What you see right behind me is Lehigh Valley 750-073. Lehigh Valley 750-73 was built by the Lehigh Valley Railroad Shops in Sayre, Pennsylvania in 1935 and is a boxcar. It spent many years hauling cargo that a boxcar would haul for many years, such as boxes, crates, and materials that were shipped on board this car many years ago. Then, in 1970, the car was then retired and it was then acquired by the Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania in Strasburg, Pennsylvania, where it is seen on display today. Well, I hope y'all enjoyed learning about trains with me today in Matthew Lap Train Guy. Also, I hope to see y'all again real soon, and if you didn't subscribe to my channel yet, the subscribe button is just down below the video screen, and if you didn't give the Facebook page a like yet, here's where you'll want to go. If you didn't give the Instagram page a follow yet, here's where you'll want to go as well. Also, be sure to get your merch at teesprings.com. The link is in the description box below, along with the Facebook and Instagram pages. And as always, remember to subscribe to the Train Guy. So this is Matthew Lapp, host of Matthew Lapp Train Guy, signing out. Till next time, all aboard!